Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me? If you can, please say yes in the live stream so that I know that I am ready to start. Okay, one more time. If you can see me, if you can hear me, please say yes in the comment stream so that I know that I can start. Is that a yes? I'm waiting for a yes. I need a yes. Come on, who's going to say yes? Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay, Lolly, thank you so much. Okay, mwah. Okay, hello everyone. Um, great. We have as usual, we have our usual suspects. We have a great crowd here. Yay! You guys are the best. You guys are number one. I am so happy. There's Tetsuro. There's Lolly. There's Tomas. I see Sleepwalker, Maya. Who else is in the house? I see Mina. I see Marion, Rita. All right, Maya, Britta. Nice. Nor. Okay, good. Casa, Kali, Noah, Anna. Yes, Larissa. Okay. Mwah. Okay. Nice. Okay, good. Victoria, and so on. Let's get going, shall we? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, right here is my coffee. Yes, and we always have a toast at the beginning. To start our lesson, we always have to have a toast. Yes, so of course, we need to toast to the green team. Yes, there's Tomas. Hello, Tomas. Yeah, Tomas is part of the green team. Yeah, they are the supporters, right? They are green. They joined the channel. They are supporters. So everyone, let's toast to the supporters because they make it happen. Yes, to the green team. Cheers. Now, of course, the green team is great, but we need everyone, right? So I want to thank everyone. Of course, the green team, they are special. And I need to thank everyone else because we all make it happen together. Yes. And without you, there's no reason for me to be here. So thank you so much for being here and being part of today's lesson. Thanks so much. Like I said, let's have a toast. Let's toast to a fun, interesting, productive, inspirational, wonderful lesson today. Yeah, everyone, cheers. So okay, I'm getting ahead. I'm going too fast. Okay, slow down, Mark. Okay, I got to slow down. At the beginning, I always get excited. I have to slow down. Okay, I'm moving too fast. I'm sorry. Okay, if you have a beverage, for example, I have coffee. If you have a beverage, let's touch. I have a mug, so if you have a mug or if you have a glass, or if you have a paper cup or styrofoam cup, whatever you have, let's touch beverages. Okay, okay. Cheers, everyone. Cheers. Thanks for coming. I see Jean. Hello, Jean. Okay, thanks, Jean. Okay. There was our toast, yeah? And that's what we do. Okay, over there is today's lesson plan. You can't see it, but I can. And first it says hello. Oh, I have to do the official hello. Okay, here is the official hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for being here with me. Mwah. Yes. Okay, good. And we will be doing dictation cards. Yes. Dictation cards are cards that have sentences on them. And I read the sentence and you write down what I say word for word. So that's our first activity, our dictation cards. Then after the dictation cards, we will do Lolly's Revenge. Lolly's Revenge is a conversation between two people, Joe and Sue. Joe and Sue. And there are 4 steps. Step 1, I will read the conversation. Step 2, I will ask, I will ask you questions about the conversation. Step 3, we will read the conversation. And step 4, we will shadow the conversation. Yeah. And then we'll do pronunciation practice. In this part, or in that activity, you write in, you type in a word that you want me to pronounce for you. So in the comment section, you type in a word, and then I will pronounce it for you. Okay, I will do my best to do it. Sometimes I don't know what word you're writing because it's a special word or it's a scientific word or something like that. So I will, if I can, I will pronounce it for you. Okay, and then we will talk about ought to. So our topic today, our theme today is ought to, okay? And then we will, I'll ask you some questions concerning ought to, okay? And then you answer yes, no, or maybe. Yes, no, maybe, okay? So let's go ahead and start. Sabine, hello, Sabine. Good. Hello. Okay, our first activity today is dictation. Yes. So I have right here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. Each card has a sentence. I will read that sentence. Then, hopefully, you have paper and a pencil, and then you will write down what I say word for word, all right? So on the paper, you write down what I say word for word. So you're listening and writing. And then in part 2, we will shadow those sentences. So that is when you're speaking at the same time as I am, right? So you're listening and speaking, okay? So it's a challenge, but it's good. Yes, challenges are good. Okay, great. Here we go. Lolly 8 cards, thank you. All right, so today's topic is ought to, okay? And, I forgot. We're going to be here 2 hours, everyone. 2 hours, so I hope you are comfortable and ready. Because I'm going to be here for 2 hours, and I hope you can be here with me for those 2 hours. Okay, so our first topic is ought to. Okay, ought to. And we use this for when something's necessary. So when it's necessary, when it's desirable, when it's desirable, when it's expected, okay? When we give advice, to give advice, okay? And then when it's probable. Okay, so these are the situations we use ought to. So we use ought to when the situation is necessary, when the situation is desirable, when the situation is expected. We use it to give advice, and when the situation is probable, when it's probable. Okay, so probable means that a chance. There's a chance. So there's a probability, a chance. When it's necessary, it must be done. When it's necessary, when it must be done. When it's desirable, when your wish, that's your wish. I desire that to be. So it's your wish that it will be. Expected, right? So that's when it should happen, okay? It's expected, it should happen. Give advice, right? So you ought to wash your hands thoroughly, yeah? And when it's probable, when it's a chance, when there's a chance, okay? So those, yes, Lolly, ought to, ought to. So ought, and then to, and it's an infinitive verb. So like you ought to eat vegetables, right? So ought, and then the to. So we have to plus verb, okay? So and it's a base verb. So ought to eat, okay? So ought plus to plus base verb. Okay, so this is the structure. This is the structure. Okay, so make this smaller. So ought plus to plus base verb. Okay, so that's our structure. Okay, and I have the cards. Okay, yes. Okay, okay, are you ready? I'm going to say each sentence and you write down what I say word for word, okay? So, yes, Tomas, same. So, should is more common, okay? But you might hear it, or sometimes maybe you want to use it, right? Oh, it's a little maybe, oh, you ought to do that. So maybe it's a little faster off your tongue, right? So for example, you should go to the store. You ought to go to the store. So ought to is a little faster off your tongue. Out of your mouth, ought to goes faster than should. You should go to the store. You ought to go to the store. Okay? So ought, will, shall. Not really, because ought is a command, right? So it's kind of a like should. You should do it. It's more of a command, where will isn't a command. Shall isn't a command. Like shall is kind of like let's. Shall we go? Let's go. Shall we go? Okay. Anyways, let's get going. Shall we? Let's get going, shall we? Okay, here we go. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards, okay? And I'm going to shuffle these up. And is Rita in the house? Let me go through the comments here. I thought I saw Rita. Rita is my card counter, but for some reason, oh, there's Rita. Okay, Rita's here, but she hadn't. At the beginning, I saw Rita. Okay, I don't see Rita right now. Rita is my card counter. And here we go. Okay, we're ready. Everyone's ready. Oh, there's Rita. Mwah. Okay, Rita, thank you. Card number 1. Card number 1. Here we go. Countdown. Go. That's right, Gene. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Card number 1. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. Number 1. Percy. Hello, Percy. Good to see Percy. Okay, I stopped. And card number 1. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. Okay, Sleepwalker. He ought to be able to get a room. Very good, Mohammed. He ought to be able to get a room. Very good. Yes. Mustafa. Mustafa. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. Jean. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. He ought to be able to get a room. Tetsuro. He ought to be able to get Lolly. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. Percy. Yes, he ought to be able to get a room. Zaya. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. Tomas. Good. All right. Everyone's doing good. Nicely done. Victoria. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. Maya. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. HB. Hello, HB. He ought to be able to get a room. HB. He ought to be able to get a room. That's 9 words. 9 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9 words. He ought to be able to get a room. That's 9. 9 words. He ought to be able to get a room. Okay, nice, Rita. Marian, he ought to be able to get a room. Sabine, he ought to be able to get a room. Sabine, hello. Okay, good job. He ought to be able to get a room. Okay, Levin, hello. Okay, good, good, good. Well, Hulali, that's okay. We just started. This is card number 1. You're fine. This is card number 1. He ought to be able to get a room. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, here we go. Card number 2. Hurari. Okay. Hiatus. Yes, card number 2. Card number 2. Okay, Nisa, he ought to be able to get a room. Good. Okay, here we go. Card number 2. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Card number 2. This ought to fit in our budget. This ought to fit in our budget. Yeah. He needs a room. That's right, Tomas. So, for example, oh, Tomas, I'm coming to Hungary, and will the rooms be full? And then you'll go, oh, you will ought to be able to get a room. You will be able to get a room. Okay. Card number 2. Yes, Rita, thank you. This ought to fit in our budget. Yeah. So maybe some people might think, oh, maybe the town will be full, like for the Olympics, right? Oh, all the hotels will be booked for the Olympics. Oh, you'll ought to be able to get a room. Oh, she'll ought to be able to get a room. Okay, Jean. Okay, Tetsuro, this ought to fit in our budget. This ought to fit in our budget. Okay, Jean, this ought to fit in our budget. Perfect. Mohammed, this ought to fit in our budget. Good, good. Nisa, this ought to fit in our budget. Good. Sleepwalker, this ought to fit in our budget. Good. Hiatus, this ought to fit in our budget. Maya, this ought to fit in our budget. Lolly, this ought to fit in our budget. Yes. Percy, this ought to fit in our budget. Tetsuro, this ought to fit in our budget. Mina, this ought to fit in our budget. Good. Julie. Hello, Julia. This ought to fit in our budget. Rita, this ought to fit in our budget. Very good. Adam, this ought to fit in our budget. Tran, this ought to fit in our budget. Larissa, this ought to fit in our budget. Good. Marion, this ought to fit in our budget. Sabine, good. He ought to be able to get a room. Good. Yes, Tomas, he ought to be able to get a room. Okay. Dan, this ought to fit in our budget. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Tomas, this ought to fit in our budget. Very good, Tomas. This ought to fit in our budget. This ought to fit in our budget. So, I mean, we, for example, we wanted to pay, we didn't want to pay more than $100. So our budget is $100. Oh, so this, this cabinet or this dresser fits in our budget. Okay, so this dresser fits in our budget. This ought to fit in our budget. Okay, good. Okay, card number 3. Thank you, Rita. Habib, yes, this ought to fit in our budget. Habib, in our budget. In our budget. Nino, this ought to fit in our budget. Okay, good. Okay, number 3. Here we go. Card number 3. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello. Card number 3. He ought to not drink and drive. He ought to not drink and drive. He ought to not drink and drive. Uh-oh. Right. No, don't want to spend more. So, Tomas, so you have enough money, but you don't want to spend more, right? So the budget, right? This is how much I want to spend for this. You have a budget and you're thinking how much you want to spend for something. So you go, okay, I will spend $100, but I do not want to pay more than 100. Okay, Yoon, he ought to not drink and drive. Muhammad, he ought to not drink and drive. Good. Sleepwalker, he ought to not drink and drive. Lolly, he ought to not drink and drive. Good. Jean, he ought to not drink and drive. Very good. Iwana, he ought to not drink and drive. Tetsuro, he ought to not drink and drive. Tomas, he ought to not drink and drive. Rita, he ought to not drink and drive. Yes, Tomas, in your limit. That's right. Good, Tomas. In my limit. That's right. Budget is in your limit. Very good, Tomas. Perfect. Percy, he ought to not drink and drive. Larissa, he ought to not drink and drive. Lolly, he ought to not drink and drive. Yes, everyone, please do not drink and drive. Mariam, he ought to not drink and drive. Because if you drink and drive, you can get in an accident or you can get a big ticket. You have to pay lots and lots of money, and maybe the drink and drive ticket is not in your budget. Maybe it's not in your budget. Okay, Sabina, he ought to not drink and drive. Good. HB, he ought to not drink and drive. Perfect, HB. Woo. Very good. Perfect. He ought to not drink and drive. He's crazy. That driver, that truck driver is crazy. That's a crazy truck driver. He ought to not drink and drive. No, don't do that. Don't do that. You will lose your job. He will lose his job. And he will have to pay a lot of money to the police. The best situation is when the budget is unlimited. Whoa. Tomas, you have an unlimited budget? Wow. That's right, Lolly. A big ticket. You can get a very big ticket. That's right. Tickets. Here in Japan, everybody gets a ticket. So if you're in the car with somebody driving, drinking and driving, the driver gets a ticket. and the passengers get a ticket. Everybody in the car gets a ticket. So here in Japan, they take it very, very seriously. There's zero tolerance in Japan. Zero tolerance. You cannot have one beer and drive a car. You cannot here in Japan. That's right, Rita. He ought to drink at home. That's right, Rita. He ought to drink at home. He ought to drink at home. Good advice. Good advice. Give advice. Good advice, Rita. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. Card number. No, oh, I have not. So Tomas says, no, I have not. So yet. So are you talking about your unlimited budget? Tomas has an unlimited budget. Everybody, go to Tomas's house. Everybody go to Tomas's house. He's paying for the drinks. Tomas is paying for the drinks because Tomas has an unlimited budget. Drinks are on Tomas. Drinks are on Tomas. Drinks are on Tomas. Yeah, so zero tolerance here in Japan. Zero tolerance. Okay, everyone. Card number 4. Number 4. Here we go. Card number 4. Countdown. Okay, so Julia, how much money the drink and drive ticket is? Here in Japan, I think it's about, I'm not sure, but it's about, it could be actually, Tetsuro, he's Japanese. Tetsuro is Japanese. He lives here. I'm thinking it's about almost $10,000. I'm not sure. So Tetsuro, how much is a drinking and driving ticket in Japan? And remember, everyone in the car gets a ticket. So the driver pays the most. That's the most expensive ticket. The front seat passenger is the second most, and then the people in the back pay a little less. Okay, number 4. So Tetsuro, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking maybe it's about almost like $10,000 or something. It's crazy. It's a huge, huge amount. I'm not sure. Tetsuro, how much is a drinking and driving ticket in Japan? Okay, here we go. Card number 4. Number 4, countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Card number 4. She ought to stop. She ought to stop. She ought to stop. Card number 4. She ought to stop. She ought to stop. That's cheap, Julia. Ukraine, $370. That's cheap. Here in Japan, it's way, way expensive. Okay, Sleepwalker. Okay, Mohammed, she ought to stop. Good, good. Sleepwalker, she ought to stop. Tetsuro, she ought to stop. Tetsuro, how much is a drinking and driving ticket in Japan? Maya, she ought to stop. Rita, she ought to stop. Percy, she ought to stop. Lolly, she ought to stop. Tomas, she ought to stop. That's what I thought. Hyakuman, right? So hyakuman is like $10,000 in US dollars. $10,000. $10,000 for drinking and driving. Oof. Don't do it. Don't do it in Japan. Don't do it in Japan. In America, you could have one beer and drive a car. You're okay. One beer, you're okay. Every hour, one beer. Each hour is okay. But not here in Japan. She ought to stop. She ought to stop. That's a good idea. She ought to start. No, she ought to stop. Go. Don't go. Stop. Don't go. Stop. Okay, million yen. Yeah, so less than million. So maybe about 8,000. I don't know. It's hyakuman. It's expensive. Or, I don't know, hachijuman. Hachijuman tabun. She ought to stop. Okay. Card number 5, everyone. Number 5. Here we go. Number 5. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Number 5. That's right. So call a taxi. Yeah? So if you're going to drink, if you're going to go out to drink, call a taxi. Call a taxi. Or walk. I like walking. I just walk. If I go out to a bar, I walk. Okay, number 5. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Oh, that's good timing. That is good timing. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Thank you, Rita. Card number 5. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. I'm drinking. I need a taxi. I need a taxi. Okay, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Yes, you can. Noah, should, yes. So should and ought to, same. Yes, you can. Should and ought to. Yeah. Okay, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Yes, Mohammed, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Lali, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Perfect. Jean, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Tetsuro, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Arrive. Sleepwalker, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Percy, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Tomas, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Okay. Hannah, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Good. Mohammed, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Very good. Julia, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Rita, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Maya, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Tetsuro, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Victoria, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Good. Fam, your plane ought to arrive in 1 minute. Oh, that's fast. My plane. Larissa, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Sabine, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Marion, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Should not. Oh. Oh, Lolly, thank you. No, you. Uh-oh. Thank you for that. Okay, good. I did. Whiteboard, on my whiteboard. Okay, HB, your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. That's right. I didn't put the U. Oh, no. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Okay. Athra, she ought to stop. Yes. That's right. This is my whiteboard. My beautiful whiteboard. I love it. I love my whiteboard. Okay. Card number 6. Number 6. Here we go. We're down to 3 more. Woo. Here we go. Thank you, Rita. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Number 6. You ought to put on sunblock. You ought to put on sunblock. You ought to put on sunblock. Eleonora! Whoa! Mwah. Eleonora's in the house. Hello, Eleonora. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. Good, 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 good. Okay. Number 6. You ought to put on sunblock. You ought to put on sunblock. Number 6. You ought to put on sunblock. Sleepwalker, you ought to put on sunblock. Very good. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yun, you ought to put on sunblock. Tetsuro, you ought to put on sunblock. Tomas, you ought to put on sunblock. Muhammad, you ought to put on sunblock. Put. Lolly, you ought to put on sunblock. Nor, you ought to put on sunblock. Rita, you ought to put on sunblock. Julia, you ought to put on sunblock. Jean, you ought to put on sunblock. Okay, good, good. Percy, you ought to put on sunblock. Yes, good, everybody. Larissa, yes. Yes, yes. Anna. Okay, you ought to put on sunblock. I always put on sunblock on my head because the sun just comes down on my head. So it's very important for me to put on sunblock on my head. I have a shiny head. My head is very shiny. HB, you ought to put on sunblock. Yes. Okay, good. You ought to put on sunblock. Sunscreen, same. Yeah, same thing. Sunscreen, sunblock. I'm pretty sure it's the same. Against burning, yes. So my head burns. Well, I protect my head. I protect my head by putting on sunblock. That's right. Okay, here we go. Number 7. Number 7. Here we go. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Number 7. You ought to be able to park here. Number 7. I do, but I like using sunblock instead of a hat. So I usually, because when I put a hat on, I get hot. My head gets hot. So I put sunblock on and my head stays cool. With a hat, my head is hot. With sunblock, my head is cool. Number 7, you ought to be able to park here. You ought to be able to park here. You ought to be able to park here. Eleonora, you ought to put on sunblock. Good. Eleonora. Good, good, good. Number 7. Okay. Iwana, you ought to be able to park here. Lali, you ought to be able to park here. Muhammad, you ought to be able to park here. To park here. Sleepwalker, you ought to be able to park here. Percy, you ought to be able to park here. Okay, Athra, you ought to be able to park here. Okay, Tetsuro, you ought to be able to park here. Good, Jean. You ought to be able to park here. Rita, you ought to be able to park here. Maya, you ought to be able to park here. Sleepwalker, you ought to be able to park here. Tomas, you ought to be able to park here. Okay, good, everyone. Victoria, yes. Julia, you ought to, good. Larissa, you ought to be able to park here. Marion, you ought to be able to park here. Good. Sabine, you ought to be able to park here. Very good, everybody. HB, you ought to be able to park here. Good, HB, perfect. To park. Good, Sabine. You ought to be able to park here. You ought to be able to park here. Okay, nice, nice, nice. Whoa, here we go. Last card, everyone. Woohoo! This is it. Last card, last card. Marcos. Hello, Marcos. Marcos is in the house. Good to see Marcos. You ought to be able to park here. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Mohammed, you ought to be able to park here. Zaya, you ought to be able to park here. Very good. Okay, here we go. Card number 8, everyone. Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Card number 8. We ought to take a taxi. We ought to take a taxi. We ought to take a taxi. Last card, yes. Thank you, Rita. Tetsuro. Tran, thank you. We ought to take a taxi. Thank you, Eleonora. I take care. I take care of my head. I always put cream, aloe vera lotion. I like aloe vera lotion on my head. That's right, Sleepwalker. HB, he is really trying hard. And HB, I've noticed his improvements. So HB, his English is getting better and better and better. I've seen it. HB's been here for a while, and I see the improvement. HB's getting better and better and better. Okay, on Tetsuro, we ought to take a taxi. Marcos, we ought to take a taxi. Jean, we ought to take a taxi. Lolly, last card, we ought to take a taxi. Percy, we ought to take a taxi. Tomas, we ought to take a taxi. Rita, we ought to take a taxi. Good. Sabine, we ought to take a taxi. Maya, we ought to take a taxi. Marion, we ought to take a taxi. HB, we ought to take a taxi. Yes, HB, very good. Okay, this is it. This was the last one. We ought to take a taxi. We ought to take a taxi. Larissa says you ought to take a taxi if you drink. That is good advice. Larissa, that is great advice. Everybody listen to Larissa's advice. Larissa says if you drink, you ought to take a taxi. Yeah, so I use aloe vera every day, Tomas. Every day. And so I put on my head and face every day. Actually, after I shower, I always put on aloe vera. I love it. I love it. Okay. We ought to take a taxi. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Nicely done, everyone. Woo, woo, woo. Okay. Now, what we did, you listened and wrote down what I said, right? So we did dictation, right? And so you were listening to me and you were writing down what I said. Or maybe you were on the computer, right? Listening and writing what you listened and wrote down. Now, we're going to shadow. That is, you're going to listen and then speak at the same time as I am. So it's a challenge, right? So you're listening and speaking at the same time, okay? So listen and speak. Listen, speak. So in, out, okay? So like real time, right? So it's a challenge, it's a skill, it's exercise, right? It's exercise for your ears and mouth. Oh, tongue. right? Ears and tongue, ears and tongue. Okay, here we go. Now this is speaking practice, not writing practice, right? Speaking practice, speaking, not writing, speaking. Okay, here we go. Shadow time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. He ought to be able to get a room. This ought to fit in our budget. 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 He ought to not drink and drive. He ought to He ought to not drink and drive. 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 She ought to stop. 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 Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. 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 You ought to put on sunblock. 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 You ought to be able to park here. 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 We ought to take a taxi. 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 Woo! We did it. Yeah. Nicely done. We did it. 8 cards. That's right. We did it. Okay. Good. Okay. Now, real quick, I want you to make your own sentence now, okay? So I made these, right? I did these myself. Now, I want you to make your own sentence, okay? I want you to make your own sentence. And remember, we're using ought to for something necessary, okay? Something necessary. For example, she ought to stop. It's necessary, right? She ought to stop. It's necessary. Something desirable. Something desirable. This ought to fit in our budget, right? So desire, like I wish this to fit, like, okay, desirable. Expected, something expected. Expected. Your taxi ought to arrive in 5 minutes. I'm expecting the taxi to come in 5 minutes. I'm thinking the taxi will come in 5 minutes. It's expected. Give advice. Give advice. Give advice. You ought to put on sunblock. You ought to put on sunblock. Okay, so that's like giving advice. Probable. 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 You ought to be able to park here. That's probable. Like, probability. I'm pretty sure. You ought to be able to park here. It's probable. Like, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you ought to be able to park here. Okay. So I want you, when you make your own sentences, I want you to think about if it's necessary, if it's desirable, expected, give advice, probable. Okay. So I'm going to look at your sentences right now in the comments here. Let's see. Stopper said, I ought to be on time there. I ought to be on time. Oh, we don't need there. I ought to be on time. Okay. That works. I ought to be on time. Okay, probable, right? So I ought to be on time. So maybe you're on your phone, you're talking to your friend. Oh, I ought to be on time. So maybe you're on the way. You're on the way. Oh, I ought to be on time. Okay, good. You ought to sunbathe until 11 a.m. Okay, Larissa, that is expected. Let's see. You ought to be able to sunbathe until 11. Okay, Larissa, you ought to be able to sunbathe until 11 a.m. You ought to be able to sunbathe until 11 a.m. Okay, good. We ought to take a taxi. Yes, that's a good idea. Tetsuro, I ought to study English every day. Advice. That's advice. Okay, that's right. I ought to study English every day. I ought to study English every day. Good advice. Good advice. I ought to study English every day. That's good advice. Lolly says, I ought to learn English every day. Wait. If I want to improve my English skills. Right. I ought to learn English every day if I want to improve my skills in English. Larissa, you ought to be able, okay, good. I ought to join every live to improve my English. That's right, Yuan. So I ought to join every live lesson to improve my English. Yes. I ought to join every live lesson to improve my English. Please come every time, twice a week. Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday. Rita, we ought to be able to, okay. Rita, that's kind of like a necessary. So be able, we don't say be, we ought to stay home. Or everybody ought to stay home. We ought to stay home. We ought to stay home. That's right. That's right. Jean says students ought to pay attention during class. Yes. That's the hardest part about being a teacher. Students not paying attention. Students do not pay attention. Thank you, Jean. That is what I desire. That is desirable. Students ought to pay attention during class. Very desirable. Okay, good. Lolly, due to the confinement, I ought to watch all of Mark's videos every day. That would be hard. I have many videos. That would be difficult, but do your best. Tomas says, I ought to meet with my dentist, just she doesn't work because, okay, I ought to meet with my dentist, but she isn't working because of the virus. Tomas, I ought to meet with my dentist, but she isn't working because of the virus. I ought to meet with my dentist, but she isn't working because of the virus. I'll put that here. I'll put that right here. I ought to meet with my dentist, but she isn't working. We could say due to the virus. I ought to meet with my dentist, but she isn't working due to the virus. Due to the virus. Okay, good. She is not working. That's right. Larissa, you ought to wear a mask in public places. Good advice. You ought to wear a mask in public places. You ought to wear a mask in public places. Okay, you ought to wear a mask in public places. Okay, my whiteboard is full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture of the whiteboard, and that way, okay, I'm going to take a picture of the whiteboard, and then I will upload it today after the class to my Facebook group page, Mark Kulek English Speaking Practice, so that you can check it out anytime you want, all right? So I always do this. I always take a picture, right? There, I open my camera, my phone to the camera app. Now I will step behind the video camera. You can't see me, but you can hear me. And I'm going to take a picture of the whiteboard. Okay, I'm going to count down. Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I got the picture. Then, after today's lesson, I will upload it to my Facebook group page, Mark Kulek English Speaking Practice, so that way you can check it out anytime you want to. Yeah, great opportunity for you. Yeah, great practice for you. Okay, good. Okay, now it's time for Lolly's Revenge. Yay! Lolly's Revenge. That is a conversation between Joe and Sue. Joe and Sue, yeah? And there will be 4 steps. This is Lolly's Revenge. Step 1, I will read the conversation. Step 2, I will ask you questions about the conversation. Step 3, we will read the conversation. And step 4, we will shadow the conversation. We will practice speaking the conversation, all right? So this is lots of fun. This is great practice, yeah? And first, before we start though, I need to clean the whiteboard. I'm going to erase the whiteboard. There's lots of good stuff here. Your sentences, yeah? However, I took a picture, so don't worry, right? So I'm going to erase it, but don't worry because I took a picture. And you can access all my whiteboards on my Facebook group page, Mark Kulek English Speaking Practice, and all the links, the link to my Facebook group page is in the not in the comments, but in the descriptions down below the video. There's links to becoming a member. There's links to my web page or website, I should say. There's links to Patreon. There's links to the books, everything. Okay, we have a clean board. Yes, we do. And before we start, I want to ask you what this conversation might be about. What will this conversation be about? What might this conversation be about? So I want you in the comments to predict. I want you to guess what this conversation will be about, or I can say, what do you think this conversation might be about? Yes, and Percy, OMTMS. Yes, I gotta write that too. OMTMSLTQT. These, okay. What will the conversation be about? Jean says, about giving advice. Oh, that's good. That's a good guess, Jean. Muhammad says, about a new job. Whoa, I think more people are losing jobs than getting jobs, right? Sleepwalker says, which exercise will they do in their home gym? Sleepwalker remembers last week's conversation about a home gym. So Sleepwalker, maybe about using the home gym. That's a good one. About food. Percy says food. Tetsudo says about disease. Disease. Yasin, I don't have any idea, but I guess about food. So Yasin, the idea is just think about like possibilities. What could they talk about? Joe can't drive his car because he had drunk so much beer. So Joe cannot drive because he drunk too much beer. Tomas says, what ought to they do? What ought to do tomorrow? What ought to do tomorrow? What they ought to do tomorrow. Okay, Tomas, what they ought to do tomorrow. Because we want the to follows the verb, right? So remember, ought, no. Remember this, Tomas. ought plus to plus base verb, the verb base. Okay, so they ought to, what they ought to do tomorrow. What they ought to do tomorrow. What they ought to do tomorrow. Okay, so here we have ought to do, the base verb. So what they ought to do tomorrow. Okay. Maya, about their plans to go out when the quarantine is over. Oh, that's Maya. That's a good, yeah. So I'm sure everyone has, maybe everyone's quarantined. So maybe you're thinking about, oh, when this finishes, what am I going to do? Yeah. So maybe lots of people are thinking about that, right? Oh, what ought I do? What ought I do? What ought to 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 do? Okay, Tomas, what they ought to do tomorrow. Good. So, what ought to do? That I like. That's kind of fun sentence. What ought to do? 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 Everybody together, ready? What ought to do? What ought to do? What ought to do? Ready? Everyone together with me. What ought to do? What ought to do? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What ought to do? What ought to do? What ought to do? Okay, good, everybody. Base verb, we could say dictionary form. So when you, Yoon, the base, like there's no change. So it's like we say base verb or dictionary verb. So if you look in a dictionary, it's just the unchanged verb, the base, like the original verb, not changed, not conjugated, not put in the past tense, not put in the future tense, not put in a conditional tense, okay? So it's just the base. It's just the plain or base or dictionary form. Okay, what ought to do? What ought to do? Okay. Yeah, same. What shall I do? What shall I do? What ought to do? What ought to do? I think it's funner to say, what ought to do? What ought to do? Okay. Okay. Heba says it might be about how to be healthy. Okay, that's good. That's good. Good. The bear verb, yeah, we could say many things. The naked verb, naked, right? Hasn't been changed. It's naked. The naked verb, the dictionary verb, the base verb, the plain verb. Okay, good. Where we ought to submit our records. Oh no, are you getting married? We ought to do, what ought to do on Friday? What ought to do on Friday? What ought to do on Friday? On Friday, we ought to do a live stream. We ought to do a live stream on Friday. We ought to do a live stream on Friday. Yes. Okay, let's get going. Okay, for people who don't know this, OMT means one more time. One more time. And then MS is more slowly. LT is last time. This is part one. Part one, I'm going to read the conversation. If you want me to if you want me to read it again, you say one more time. If you want me to go slower, then you say MS, more slowly. Okay, this is step 2. Question time. I'm going to ask you questions about the conversation. If you're ready for the questions, you put QT, question time. If you are just about ready and you just want it last time, and then you LT, last time, and then I will read the questions, okay? Sweet boy, hello, hello. Okay, here we go. Dance with barbells. Dance with barbells. Okay, here we go. Okay, countdown. 2. Oh, first, this is Joe. Everyone say hello to Joe. Hello, Joe. This is Sue. Hello, Sue. Joe and Sue. Joe and Sue. Okay, here we go. Countdown. Okay, yeah, Mina, on Friday. Be here on Friday, Japan time. Everything is Japan time. I'm here in Japan. So when I say Friday at 10 a.m., that means here in Japan at 10 a.m. Friday. Okay, good, good. Here we go. Joe and Sue, here we go. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Joe is first. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. Uh-oh, sneeze time. Oh, I almost had a sneeze. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to start again. Sorry. Okay. One more time. Sorry. Joe is first. Here we go. Here's Joe. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. OMT, LT, MS. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Infinitive is like to plus the base verb. To plus base verb. To do. Infinitive, to do. Okay, sleepwalker, OMT, here we go. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. OMT, MS. Oh, MS. I see MS. Okay. Takistan. No virus in Takistan. Okay. Catherine, here we go. Catherine, okay. Okay, Lolly, OMT. Here we go. Jean, IT. Okay, here we go. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Marcos, OMT. Oh, Mohammed, I see LT. I see Noha. I see a QT. Mina, I see a OMT. Lolly's a girl. Lolly's a girl. Lolly, that's a girl's name, Lolly. Lolly, is that your real name? Is that Lolly? Is that your real name or is it just your internet name? Okay. Okay, Sleepwalker QT. Noha QT. Marcos OMT. Okay, let's do OMT. Because Marcos is green. Marcos is a member. So Marcos wants OMT. So Marcos gets OMT. Okay, here we go. OMT. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Okay, Lolly, internet name. Okay. What's your real name? What's your real name, Lolly? What's your name? Okay. Okay. LT. Muhammad has LT. Lolly OMT. Okay. Let's do it. OMT. Let's do LT. Okay? Is that okay? LT? Everybody okay? Last time, LT. Okay, everybody? Okay. Hello, Light Star. Yoon is ready for question. Okay, let's go LT, everyone. Okay, LT, yes? Is that okay? Marcos. Okay, we have QT now. What shall we do? What shall we do? What ought we do? What ought we do? What ought to do? What ought to do? What ought to do? What ought to do? Okay? What ought to do? What ought to do? Okay. Question? Okay, let's do QT. Let's do QT. I think we're good. Okay, QT, let's do it. Okay, Tomas LT. Okay, let's do LT. This is it. LT, everyone. Okay, let's do it. LT means, this means one more time, last time, question time. Okay, here we go. LT, last time. Okay, Lolly, you got it. Okay, last time, more slowly. Sue, what? Oh, no. Sorry. Mistake. Here we go, one more time. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Okay. We did it. We did it. We did it. We did it. Now we're ready for question time. Yes? Question time. This is step 2. Step 1 is finished. We finished it. Step 1 is finished. Now we are at question time. Here we go. We are now question time. Everyone loves tales and sleeping songs. Sleeping songs. Good, Tomas. Good, Tomas. Okay, here we go. Question number 1. Question number 1. Count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Question number 1. Where is Sue going? Where is Sue going? Question number 1. Where is Sue going? Where is Sue going? Question number 1. Where is Sue going? Where is Sue going? Question number 1. Where is Sue going? Question number 1. Where is Sue going? She wants to get out of the she wants to get out. She wants to go somewhere. Yeah, well, actually, she doesn't know. She doesn't know. Where are you going? I don't know. Yeah, so she doesn't know. Okay, good, Julia. Okay, she does not know. She does not know. She wants to get out of the house. That's right. She wants to get out of the house. Good. So she doesn't know. Where is she going? I don't know. Okay, good. She doesn't know. Yes, Percy. Good. Rita, she wants to get out of the house. Larissa, she wants to get out of the house. Yes. Yes, she does. Okay, good. Question number 2. That's right, Sabina. She doesn't know. Question number 2. What is everyone doing? What is everyone doing? What is everyone doing? Yeah, so all my live streams they get saved and they go on my playlist. So you go to my YouTube channel and go to my playlist, and you will see all the live stream lessons. This is 173. So all of my live stream lessons are on my YouTube channel. They're all in my playlist. All in the playlist. What is everyone doing? Yeah, Sleepwalker. Good. Yes. Number 2, what is everyone doing? Sleepwalker. You did it. Good. Yes, Jean. What is everyone doing? Well, Jean, they ought to do it, but what are they doing? What is everyone doing? They are hunkering down. Good. Okay, Tetsuro, are all hunkering down at home. Good. They are all hunkering down at home. Tetsuro. They are all hunkering down at home. Good, good. Everyone stays at home. Yes, that's right, Larissa. Everyone's staying at home. Hunkering down means stay in place. Stay in place. Hunkering down. Stay in place. Good, Tomas. Hunkering down means staying in place, not moving. Like stay at home. Stay in your house. Stay in your home. Stay in your apartment. Don't leave. Hunker down. Good, good. There, everyone is hunkering down. Okay, good, good. Okay, question 3. Number 3. How is Sue feeling? How is Sue feeling? How is Sue feeling? Question 3. How is Sue feeling? Okay, good, good, Tomas. Yeah, hunker down. So when there's like a snowstorm, right? So we'll use hunker down, for example, like, so you get your supplies, so you have your food, you have everything you need to stay home, right? So let's say there's going to be a big storm, right? There's going to be a big snowstorm. So you don't want to leave the house. Say, okay, let's hunker down. Right now, the virus, so people are not going out because we don't want the virus, the COVID-19 to spread. We don't want other people to get COVID-19, so everyone is staying home. We are all hunkering down. Okay. Good, good, good. Okay, so number 3, how does Sue feel? She feels not good. She needs to have a walk. Yeah, she's feeling boring. Okay, yeah, so how is Sue feeling? So here are some words. And maybe many people are feeling this way. Many people are feeling this way. So Sue is feeling okay, so Sue is feeling confined. Sue is feeling confined. Sue is feeling restricted. Sue is feeling restricted. Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Sue is feeling quarantined. Well, that's not an adjective. Sue is feeling shut in. Sue is feeling unfree. Okay, so how is Sue feeling? Sue is feeling confined. Sue is feeling restricted. Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Sue is feeling shut in. Sue is feeling unfree. One more time. Sue is feeling confined. Confined. Sue is feeling restricted. Restricted. Sue is feeling claustrophobic. 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 Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Oh, caged. Yes, I like that. So actually, sleep are caged. I like that. Caged. Okay, good, good. So, okay, let's add. Sue is feeling confined. Sue is feeling restricted. Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Sue is feeling shut in. Sue is feeling unfree. Sue is feeling caged. Very good. Very good. Everyone is hunkering down in their house. Okay, good, good, good. So Sue is feeling all these feelings. That's right. Sue is feeling unfree. Good, good, good. Okay. Question, she's feeling shut in. Yes. Good, good, Julia. Sue is feeling shut in. Very good, very good. Oh, depressed. That's good, good, Tetsuro. Depressed. Sue is feeling depressed. Sue is feeling depressed. Good, 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 good. Nice, nice. Sue is feeling depressed. Sue is feeling alone. Well, maybe not alone because she's got Joe's there. So maybe she's not feeling alone, but she's just feeling confined, right? She's in the house, right? And so now her world is much smaller than before. So these are all kind of like you feel confined, right? Confined, restricted, claustrophobic, shut in, unfree, caged, right? Okay, good, good, good. Okay. Yeah, happy to, and I have more time too. And right now, my university's classes are postponed. So normally I would be teaching at my university, but they've been postponed until the end of the month. So I have more free time to make lessons, more free time to do live streams. So I have more free time to be with you. So there's always good and bad, good and bad. So the bad thing is people are getting sick. Of course, this is terrible, right? We don't want this. But there are a few good things, right? So maybe we have some more time for studying and more time for reading books and doing yoga and things like that. So there are a little bit of good things, just a few. Okay, here we go. Question number four. How will Joe help Sue? Question number 4. How will Joe help Sue? Yeah, Danny, she's boring. Yeah, it's boring, right? A little more free time, yeah. Well, normally I'd be making my lessons for university, but now I can concentrate more on making lessons here. Okay, Maya says, I'm like Sue. I'm depressed because there's no light in the there's no light at the end of the tunnel about this situation with the virus for the time being. That's right, Maya. So Maya, I'm depressed because there's no light at the end of the tunnel. No light at the end of the tunnel. No light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, sleepwalker number 4. He will read a story for Sue. Yes. How will Joe help Sue? Sleepwalker says, he will read a story. Yes. He will read her a story. Good, Tetsuro. He will read her a story. He will read her a story. We need to use our creativity. Yes. That's right. We're confined, so we have to be creative. Good, good. That's right, Rita. We need to be creative because we're confined. He will tell a tale to her, or actually read a story. So tell a tale. Okay, Tomas, we use that tell a tale. Maybe we're not reading a book, we're thinking of the story. I will tell you a tale, and then I'm going to tell you, okay? So, but here with the book, we say read a story. I will read you a story, okay? I will read you a story, blah, 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 blah. No book, good Tomas. Nice, good point here, Tomas. No book, and we say, oh, I will tell you a tale. I will tell you a tale. I will tell you a tale. a book. I will read you a story. I will read you a story. I will tell you a tale. 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 I will read you a story. I will read you a story. Okay, good, 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 good. All right. Okay, good. Question number 5. Question number 5, countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Question number 5. What is Sue grabbing? What is Sue grabbing? What is Sue grabbing? Maybe, Tomas. Maybe. We don't know. Good point. Tomas, good point. That's right. We don't know. Maybe a book, maybe no book. Maybe he's just going to tell her a tale from his head. That's good. That's good. That's right, Vilmar, or Vilmala. Joe will tell Sue. Joe will read a story to Sue. Joe will read a story to Joe. Okay, number 5. Joe has already become a writer. I don't know. Number 5. What is Sue grabbing? What is Sue grabbing? And Jean, yes. And Sleepwalker, you got it. Lolly, you got it. Marian, you got it. Jean, you got it. Tetsudo, you got it. Larissa, you got it. Tomas, you got it. So Sue is grabbing a blanket, yeah? Because Sue wants to get comfortable. It's like, I want to put on a blanket when you read me a story. So grab a blanket to be comfortable, to snuggle. Snuggle in your blanket. Snuggle in your blanket. Yes, yes, a blanket. Good, good, good. Woo! Nicely done, everyone. Okay, you listened to the story. You answered questions about the story. Now, step 3. Maya, she's irate and she is annoyed with Joe's offer. Really? No. Well, at the beginning. Okay, good. Maya. Okay. This is great. You are reading into the story. You are using the language and thinking. You are making your own conclusions. That's great. Maya, you are making your conclusions. You are internalizing the story. You haven't seen it. You've only listened to it, and you've comprehended it very, very well. So, great point, because at the beginning, Sue is annoyed. She is feeling claustrophobic, right? Sue is feeling claustrophobic. Sue is feeling confined. Sue is feeling restricted, right? I got to get out. I got to get out of the house. And then Joe says, stop. You can't do that. You can't leave the house. Everybody is hunkering down. Everyone is staying in place. Everyone is taking shelter. Everyone is staying home. You can't go out. And then Sue's going like, I got to get out. I'm claustrophobic. And then Joe says, wait, I'll read you a story. And Sue's still irritated. I'm not a kid. I'm not a child, right? I'm not a child. You know, children like having stories read to them, right? So children like to listen to a story. So like a night bedtime story, right? So maybe if you have children, or now your children are bigger, like mine. I used to read my kids stories, but now I don't. But so Joe says, I'll read you a story. And then Sue goes, I'm not a kid. So she's still feeling agitated, right? She's still feeling annoyed. She's still feeling claustrophobic. And then Joe says, wait, I know you're not a kid, but it'll be fun. And then Sue, now she's maybe relaxing a little bit. She's starting to relax. And then she goes, okay, maybe I ought to grab a blanket. So now she's kind of thinking, okay, I will enjoy this, right? And then So she puts on the blanket and she tells Joe, I am ready for your story. So, good, Maya. So she was agitated, feeling claustrophobic, feeling confined. And then Joe says, okay, calm down, relax. I will read you a story. And then she goes, oh, okay, maybe I'll grab a blanket. And now she's getting ready. And she goes, okay, I'm ready for the story. Okay, so thank you, Maya. Perfect, Maya. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Hunker down. Maintain in position. Yes, that's right. Okay. Sue is all ears. Okay, Sleepwalker. Sue is all ears. Very good. That's a nice idiom. Sue is all ears. Okay, Lolly says, I am not a child, but I love to listen to a fairy tale. Yeah. Good, good, good. Okay, I think it's fun, right? Listening to stories. I like it too. So I think everyone, it doesn't matter your age, if you're young or old, I think we all like listening to a story. I don't know, like they don't have this before. I remember like, on the radio, you could listen to stories on the radio. That used to be long time ago, before TV. There was radio. Does people know radio? Do you know what a radio is? A long time ago, people used to listen to the radio. So they were listening to stories, yeah? Old time stories, like The Shadow. There's all these like radio shows, right? And so families would sit down and listen to the radio, and then they would listen to a story on the radio. That happened maybe we should start doing that these days, right? Because when you're listening, you have your imagination. You can use more of your imagination. When you're watching TV, your eyes are working, your ears are working, but not your imagination, right? But when you're just only your ears are working, you're only using your ears, then you can close your eyes, and then use your imagination, right? So you're listening. So someone's reading a book, or you're on the radio. You can listen to the story on the radio. You can close your eyes and use your imagination. Where TV, you open your eyes and no imagination, right? Okay. Let's see. Person says, I listened to the radio when I was a student. Yeah, me too. When I used to listen to the radio. Who is old enough to become a child again? I am. Okay, good. Lolly says, when I was a child, my grandmother told me a lot of stories. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, great. Okay, I love listening. Me too. Like, poetry, that's very important. Language learning is very important. Listening, right? And so using our ears is very, very important. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, let's read the story together. Okay, let's read the story together. Laura says, on the radio, listen to the morning gymnastics. Yeah, so the radio is good. Like now we all have computers and TVs. Sometimes it's good to listen to the radio. Yeah, of course there's music, right? So we like listening to music. So we listen to the radio for music. But also I like listening to like talk radio. So I like listening to conversations on the radio and stories on the radio. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Let's read the conversation together. Here we go. This is reading time. Okay, here we go. Joe's first. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Yeah, old school podcast. Yeah. I listen to like NPR podcasts, On Point. So when I'm driving, I'll listen to podcasts on my iPhone. Okay, here we go. One more time. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. I'm ready for your story. Sue is ready. All right, Sue, good job. Okay, now it's time for us to shadow. Yes, we need to shadow. So here, so now it's time to practice speaking, right? So this is your input and output, output. So you're listening and speaking at the same time, okay? So it's a little difficult, but that's okay. You can do it. Okay, here we go. Ready? Shadow time. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Sue, where are you going? Sue, where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? I don't know. I don't know. I have to get out of the house. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Okay, good. Okay, let's look at it one more time and then we'll move on. Okay, here we go. Sue, where are you going? I don't know. I have to get out of the house. You can't do that. We are all hunkering down. You ought to stay home. Please, I need to go somewhere. I have an idea. I will read you a story. I'm not a kid. I know, but it will be fun. Maybe I ought to grab a blanket. That would be comfortable. Okay, Joe, I'm ready for your story. Whoa, we did it. Yeah. That was Joe and Sue. Joe and Sue. And that was Lolly's Revenge. Yay. Okay, nicely done, everyone. Okay, good, good, good. Now, it's time for pronunciation practice. That's right, pronunciation practice. So we'll spend 10 minutes. Right now it's 6:50 Japan time. We'll go till 7 o'clock, okay? We'll spend 10 minutes on pronunciation practice, okay? 10 minutes. And so in the comments, please type in words that you want me to pronounce for you. So try to make these natural or like everyday conversation words, okay? Normal words. Don't try to trick me. Okay, so let's thank you, Mina. So let's have some pronunciation practice. So in the comments, please type in words that you would like me to pronounce for you, okay? Okay, so in the comments, please type in words that you would like me to pronounce for you. They could be words, they could be sentences, phrases. Okay, Lolly's first. All right. Bed, bad. Bed, bad. Bed, bad. Bed, bad. We did it one more time. We did it one more time. We did it one more time. Mark, when you were a schoolboy, did you play in a school theater? No, I was too shy. Sleepwalker, I was too shy. No, I didn't. Okay, Sabine. No, now. No, now. No, now. No, now. Allah. Issue. 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 Mark, you have an acting talent. No, I don't. Only with you. I feel comfortable with you. So if there was like an audience, I wouldn't know. I do not have an acting talent. I am comfortable with you here. Everyone, like my live stream people, I feel comfortable so I can feel relaxed with you. Okay, Jean. Main, men, man. Main, men, man. Main, men, man. Good, good, Jean. These are perfect. These are great words. Main, Main Street. Men. They are men. He is a man. This is Main Street. They are men. This is a man. Julie, hello, Julie. Burden of proof. Burden of proof. Burden of proof. Burden of proof. Tetsuro, vocabulary. 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 Sleepwalker. Oh, really? Oh, really? Oh, really? Percy, take care. Percy, I have hay fever. I have hay fever, so I have a cough from the hay. Every year I get hay fever. So actually, it's not bad this year. Every year it's been getting better each year. Before it was terrible. So actually, I'm doing pretty good. Okay, Zaya. Wait, weird. Wait, weird. Wait, weird. Wait, weird. Rita, horizon. Mark, at the very beginning of the lesson, you wrote, I'm about set to go. What does it? I'm ready to start. I like to write down collocations to sound more natural. Yeah, collocation. Okay, Maya. I'm about ready to start. I don't think I said set. Maybe I made a mistake. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm about set. Maybe I said I'm about set to go. Okay, I'm about set to go. I'm about set to go. Okay, I probably said that. Yeah, I'm about set. So I'm set, meaning like ready, set, go. Right? You know that expression, Maya? Ready, set, go. So like on your mark, set, go. So on your mark. So the sprinters, right? They go to the line. So on your mark. So you're on the position, set. So and then go. So like sprinters. On your mark, set, go. So I'm about set to go. So maybe I did say that. I'm about set. I'm just about set, and then go. Okay, Tetsuro. Run, ran, run, ran, run, ran, run, ran, run, ran. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, okay, Marcos. Breathe, 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 breathe. Or is that breath? Hold on, Marcos. Yeah, breath. I'm sorry, breath. Okay, Marcos, breath, 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 breath. Okay, Tomas, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough, cough. No, caught, cough, caught, cough. Mina, ought and at, ought, at, ought, at, ought, at. Muhammad, hurt, heart, hurt, heart, hurt, heart. Lolly, bought, boat, both. Oh, Lolly, this is good. Bought, boat, both. I bought a new car. This is a big boat. This is a big boat. Both Lolly and Tomas are good friends. Both Lolly and Tomas are good friends. Allah, height, weight, height, weight, height, weight, height, weight. Okay, Isik. Again, please. Men, man, men, man, men, man, men, man. They are men, he is a man. They are men, he is a man. They are men, he is a man. Okay, Muhammad, vocabulary, vocabulary. Allah, rarely, 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 rarely. Tomas, breathe, breath, breathe, breath, breathe, breath. No. I think you got an opposite. A breath and to breathe. So I think you got an opposite there, Tomas. Let me check. Yeah, you got an opposite. So, Tomas, so it's you got the breathe, breath, to breathe. That's the verb, and then a breath. Take a breath. That's a breath. Breathe. I'm breathing. I'm breathing. A breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. Okay, so you got those two mixed up. So it should be to breathe, a breath. Okay, fascinating, sleepwalker. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. Rita, salmon, 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 salmon. Light star, wanna go? Wanna go? That should be a question. Wanna go? Wanna go? Okay. Light star, put a question mark. Wanna go? Wanna go? Wanna go? Okay, Muhammad. Lose, loose, lose, loose, lose, loose, lose, loose, lose, loose. Sleepwalker, integrate, wait, hold on. Integrally, huh? Integrally. Sleepwalker, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing this terribly. I'm doing this terribly. Integrally. Hold on. God, I can't believe this. Hold on. Hold on. Intragonally. I'm going to skip that, Sleepwalker. Sorry. Fit like a glove, Julie. Fit like a glove. Fit like a glove. Bed, bad. Bed, bad. Wanna, gonna. Wanna, gonna. Wanna, gonna. Wanna, gonna. Wanna, gonna. Wanna, gonna. Tetsuro. Begin, began, begun. Begin, began, begun. Begin, began, begun. Begin, began, begun. No, now. No, now. No, now. Really, rarely. Really, rarely. Really, rarely. Really, rarely. Man, men. Man, men. Man, men. Rural. Okay, Maya. Rural, 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 rural. Julie, out of place, out of place, out of place. Main, men, man. Main, men, man. Okay. That's right, Tomas. Yes. Wait. The last one. Okay, Dandy. That's that last word. I don't know. Wait. Marcos. Anxiety. I need water. Anxiety. Rita, bacon. Okay, bacon. Okay, I'm losing track. Let's see. Mischievous. Dandy, ready, set, go. That's right. Ready, set, go. Zaya, have, how. Catherine, on, one. Okay, Rashid. Hello, Rashid. Run, ran. Begin. Okay, Dandy, breathe. Okay, Julia, hold on. Aberration. Oh, aberration. Sorry, aberration, Julie. Aberration, 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 aberration. No now, no now, no now. Mischievous, mischievous, mischievous. Rarely, rarely. I'm a brave girl. Caught, cough, caught, cough, cough. No, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough, caught, cough. Thank you, Wani. Stick to your ribs. I don't know. Stick to your ribs. Okay, well, I got to finish this here. Bought boat, bought boat, bought boat. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, I'm exhausted. Grunge, grunge. Okay, Lolly, this is the last one. Last one. Okay, here we go. Last one. This is Lolly. Last one. Goose, book, loose, look. Goose, book, loose, look. Lose, book, lose. Okay, here we go. Goose, book, lose. No, loss. Hold on. I'm getting, my brain is, no. Lose. Okay, that's right. Okay, lose. Okay, here we go. Goose, book, lose, look. Goose, book, lose, look. Okay, cut, cough. Cut, cough. Okay. That's it for pronunciation. We're going to do it next week or Friday. We'll do it Friday, okay? Thanks a bunch. Thank you. Okay. We will continue this on Friday, okay? Pronunciation on Friday. Today we're no more pronunciation today on Tuesday, okay? Next pronunciation practice is on Friday because we have to do ought to questions, okay? I have some ought to questions, okay? So, Lolly, no problem. You are very welcome. Oh, okay. Here we go. Ought to, ought to, ought to. Okay, ought to, ought to. Okay, ought to, ought to. Okay, here we go. Our first question. Or not question, but how do you feel? Okay, how do you feel? So you're going to say yes, no, maybe. Okay, so you're going to go yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Okay. Everyone ought to wash everyone ought to wash their hands several times a day. Uh-oh, gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for telling me. Okay. Everyone ought to wash their hands several times a day. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe. So Sleepwalker says, it's so important these days. That's for sure. Oh, Sleepwalker, for sure. Yes. Sabine, yes. Good, good, good. Everyone ought to wash their hands several times a day. Yes, yes, yes. Of course, of course. Of course. Okay. 2, everyone ought to protect people by protecting themselves. Number 2, everyone ought to protect people by protecting themselves. Everyone ought to protect people by protecting themselves. 2, understand? Everyone ought to protect people by protecting themselves. Yes, no, maybe. Number 3. There ought to be enough beds in hospitals. 3, there ought to be enough beds in hospitals. There ought to be enough beds in hospitals. Number 2, everyone's yes. Good, yeah. So protect yourself and you will protect other people, right? So wear a mask. Don't go outside. Stay home. Protect yourself or protect other people by protecting yourself. So by staying home, you are protecting yourself and you are protecting other people. Wear a mask, you are protecting yourself and you are protecting other people. 3, there ought to be enough beds in hospitals. Number 3, I see a no. Big yes. This is many countries build new hospitals. Yeah. This ought to fit in our budget. Good. So this is tough, right? This is the problem. This is a problem because if people go outside and if they don't protect themselves, if they don't protect other people, too many people go to the hospital and there's not enough beds. So protect people, protect yourself so there are enough beds, so that there are enough beds in hospitals. So if you go out and don't wear a mask and infect people, or you go out, let's say you're fine, you're healthy, you go out and you get it from somebody, and then you get a fever, you get sick, you have to go to the hospital. And so now you're taking beds. So there may not be enough beds in the hospitals. 4. Whoops. Okay. Number 4. This pandemic ought to finish by May. Number 4. This pandemic ought to finish by May. This pandemic ought to finish by May. 4. Yep, not enough. 4. This pandemic ought to finish by May. Number 4. What's your feeling? What's your feeling on this one? This pandemic ought to finish by May. I see a big maybe. Big maybe for 4. Who knows? Well, Laura says we got a yes, we got a maybe. Sleepwalker. Tomas says it won't. I see a maybe. I hope, of course. Yeah, let's. Unfortunately, I don't think so. Lali doesn't think so. Pandemic is like spread everywhere in the world. Spread everywhere in the world. Spread all over the world. I think every country, right? It's everywhere. It's a pandemic. Okay. Marcos, maybe. Okay, number 5. Ugh. Social distancing ought to be enough to protect ourselves. Number 5. Social distancing ought to be enough to protect ourselves. Social distancing ought to be enough to protect ourselves. Social distancing ought to be enough to protect ourselves. 2 meters. Yes. No, need disinfecting too. So Tomas says, so this is not enough. Social distancing is not enough, right, Tomas? So Tomas says, disinfecting too. So Tomas, social distancing is not enough. Only social distancing is not enough. Okay, let's do one more, number 6. Okay, number 6. You ought to stay out of trains and buses. Number 6. You ought to stay out of trains and buses. You ought to stay out of trains and buses. So Tomas says, okay, so social distancing and masks and gloves and disinfecting. Whoa, that's a lot. Yes, I am. Light Star, right there is a big road. So sorry about that. Yes. Right there is a big window. So this is my office, and there's a big window, and then the street, and so the cars drive by, so, and jets fly over, so you can hear the cars. Yeah. Okay. So 6, you ought to stay out of trains and buses. This includes, right, public transportation. 6, Lolly agrees. Yes, it is better to reduce the use of transportation. Yep, for sure. Okay, good. Yes. So let's protect ourselves, everyone. Okay, let's go over this one more time. Here we go. Number 1, everyone ought to wash their hands several times a day. Yes. Everyone ought to protect people by protecting themselves. Yes. There ought to be enough beds in hospitals. Yes. This pandemic ought to finish by May. Let's hope so. 5, social distancing ought to be enough to protect ourselves. Maybe not. Maybe we also need to wear a mask and wash our hands and don't touch anything. When you're outside, don't touch. 6, you ought to stay out of trains and buses. Yes, stay out of trains. Stay out of subways if you can. Here in Japan, people are still riding buses. People are still taking trains. People are still on the subways. People are still in taxis. So Japan is going to be in trouble soon. People are going to work every day. People are going, Japan is going to get hit here pretty, like in days. So in Japan, it's going to get bad in a few days for sure. Because people are not doing this. People are taking the trains. People are going to work. So Japan's going to be in trouble in the next few days, next week for sure. Maya, only go by car. Yeah, your car. Just your own car. Good. Okay. Tetsuo, in Japan, trains for commuters are much... Yep. Tetsuo, it's going to happen. My friend takes the train to work every day, and it's like, he has to go commute to his office. It's crazy. Japan, we're going to get hit hard in Japan. Japan is in trouble, everyone. Japan is in trouble. Okay. Okay. Everyone, thanks so much. I have to go. I'm tired. I'm too tired. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the green people. The green people, I love you. They are the supporters. They are the true people of this channel. So I really thank the green people for their support. They are supporting me and the channel. So thank you so much. Our next live stream will be on Friday, April 10th, April 10th, okay, at 10 a.m., okay? Our next live stream will be Friday, April 10th at 10 a.m., okay? So please be here. I want to see you, and if you can, please become a member. Hit the join button. Read about the benefits of becoming a member. Support me so I can support you. And for flashcards and worksheets, I have a website, markkulek.com. Please check that out. I have a mug here. We can drink coffee together. English conversation practice right there. And the other side is me. So get your mug. I got books, Amazon.com, 50 very short conversations, book 1 and book 2. And I have Patreon page. So there's lots of ways to support this channel and support me. And I really appreciate it. If you want to be green, like Sonara. Oh, Sonara. Long time Sonara just showed up. If you want to be like Sonara and Larissa and Lolly and Sleepwalker and Tomas and Maya and Tetsuro, please become green. Please become a supporter. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. So please come Friday. You like my mug. Thanks so much, Sarah. Check it out, Sarah. Okay, everyone. Love you. Mwah. You're the best. Without you, there's no reason for me to be here. So thanks so much. Yes, stay safe. Everyone, stay safe. Everyone, wash your hands very carefully. When you go out, wear a mask. They help. It's true. They help you. The masks help you. Please put on a mask. Wash your hands. Protect people to protect yourself. Protect people to protect yourself. And of course, please smile and be positive. Be positive is very, very important for your health. Okay? Be positive for good health. Okay? I love you. You guys are big supporters. You are big help to me. I really, really appreciate it. And let's count down together. Okay? And then I will be here. Yes, stay home. Everyone, stay home. That's good advice, Nara. Stay home. Don't go out. Okay, stay home. All right. So let's end the stream. Let's count down together. Okay, here we go. All right. And then until Friday. Yeah, until Friday, 10 a.m. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Love you. Mwah. Love you. And everyone, stay positive. Smile. Smile. If you smile, you're going to be positive. Okay, everyone. Take it easy. Bye.